The sun rose slowly over the sprawling city, its glass towers catching the morning light. Expensive cars glided down wide avenues, drivers rushing their wealthy bosses to meetings that could make or break millions. Among them was Ramesh, a man whose life was defined by quiet duty. He had been the personal driver of Mr. Arjun Malhotra, one of the city's most powerful CEOs, for almost 15 years. Ramesh was a simple man. He wore the same 2 neatly pressed uniforms every week, polished his shoes until they gleamed, and bowed his head respectfully whenever he spoke to his employer. His little 1-bedroom apartment was modest, yet spotless. For him, the greatest treasure in the world was not money, but his daughter, Anaya. Anaya was just 12 years old, but her eyes already carried a light that most adults lacked. She loved reading books late into the night, solving puzzles, and asking questions that often left her father speechless. Despite her humble surroundings, she carried herself with grace and curiosity. Ramesh often said to her, "Anaya, education is the only jewel I can give you. Remember, knowledge can't be stolen." Anaya would smile and nod, hugging her father tightly. But she also noticed the lines of worry etched into his face whenever the subject of her school fees came up. Through years of savings and sacrifices, skipping meals, working double shifts, refusing to buy himself even a new pair of shoes, Ramesh had managed to enroll Anaya into St. Clair's Academy, the most prestigious school in the city. It was a place where the children of billionaires, ministers, and celebrities studied. From the very first day, Anaya knew she was different. Her classmates carried iPads, wore branded watches, and were dropped off in sleek black cars by chauffeurs. She, meanwhile, arrived in her father's slightly dented, decade-old sedan. Her shoes were clean but plain, her bag was hand-stitched, and her lunchbox contained simple homemade food. The whispers began almost immediately. "Who's she?" one boy sneered. "Her dad's just a driver? Can you believe it? In our school?" Another girl giggled. At first, Anaya ignored them. Her father's words echoed in her heart. "Focus on your studies, not on the noise around you." But ignoring cruelty is never easy when you're 12 years old. Every laugh felt like a dagger, every whisper like a weight pressing her down. One afternoon during lunch, Anaya opened her steel tiffin box, revealing simple rotis and sabzi her father had packed with love. At the next table, a group of wealthy kids snickered. "Ew, what's that smell?" a girl said, wrinkling her nose. "It's poor people food," another added. "Why don't you just eat in the servant quarters?" a boy mocked loudly. Anaya's cheeks flushed red. She wanted to cry but forced herself to keep calm. She quietly closed the box and sipped water, pretending she wasn't hungry. What she didn't notice was a figure standing at the far end of the cafeteria. Kabir Malhotra, the CEO's son, had been observing the scene. Kabir was in the same grade as Anaya, though they had barely spoken. Unlike most of the kids, Kabir wasn't cruel, just distant. But that day, something about the way Anaya sat, holding back tears with such dignity, caught his attention. That evening, as Ramesh drove Mr. Malhotra home, Anaya sat quietly in the back seat with her school books. She was used to sitting silently when her father's boss was around. Mr. Malhotra was a man who radiated authority. His tailored suits, expensive watch, and commanding voice were enough to intimidate anyone. He barely noticed Anaya most days. To him, she was simply the driver's daughter, a shadow in the background. But that day, as he glanced at her through the rear-view mirror, he noticed something unusual. While most kids would be playing games on their phones, Anaya was reading a heavy Japanese novel, its pages filled with complex kanji characters. "Is that Japanese?" asked the CEO, raising an eyebrow. Anaya looked up, startled. "Yes, sir," she said softly. "I'm still learning, but I can read some." The CEO leaned back, intrigued. "Japanese? At your age? Why?" Anaya hesitated. "Because most people here only learn English or French. I thought maybe if I learned Japanese, I could do something different, something that would make my papa proud." For the first time, the powerful CEO studied her closely. Her voice carried no arrogance, only sincerity. He said nothing more, but a seed of curiosity had been planted in his mind. Later that night, after finishing her homework, Anaya sat with her father on their small balcony. The city skyline glowed in the distance, towers piercing the night sky like giants of glass and steel. "Papa," she whispered, "why do people hate us for being poor?" Ramesh's heart clenched. He had no easy answers. "Because they don't understand, beta. They think money makes them better. But remember this, one day the world will see your worth. You just have to keep shining." Anaya rested her head on his shoulder. "I'll make you proud, Papa. One day they won't laugh at me." Neither of them knew it yet, but destiny was already turning its wheels. The cruel laughter of her classmates, the silent observation of the CEO's son, and the curiosity of the CEO himself, these threads were about to weave together into a story that would change their lives forever.
The following week at St. Clair's Academy began like any other. Children spilled into the massive courtyards, their laughter echoing against marble walls. Shiny cars lined the driveway, each more expensive than the last. For the wealthy children, this was normal, an everyday showcase of their privilege. But for Anaya, every morning was a test of courage. She carried her books tightly to her chest, her shoulders hunched as if bracing for impact. That day, the whispers started early. "Look at her shoes. They're not even branded. Why does she even come here? She doesn't belong. Her father's the driver, right? Must smell like gasoline at home." Each word stabbed at her heart, but she kept walking. Papa said, "Ignore them. Just study, just prove them wrong." The teacher's challenge. During the last period, the students filed into world languages class. The tall, stern-looking teacher, Mrs. D'Souza, tapped her ruler against the board. "Today we will do something different. Since our school hosts international exchange programs, I want to see if anyone here has explored languages beyond English and French. Let's test how open-minded you are." The class buzzed with excitement. Many raised their hands to show off their Spanish, Italian, or a few words of Mandarin they'd picked up on vacation. "All right," Mrs. D'Souza said, "let's begin with a simple Japanese introduction. Who can try?" The room went silent. "Japanese? That's impossible," one boy laughed. "Why would anyone even bother with that?" another chimed in. Mrs. D'Souza sighed. "So, none of you." Just then, a soft voice spoke from the back. "Watashi wa Anaya desu. Yoroshiku onegashimasu." The class froze. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. It was Anaya. For a brief second, silence hung heavy, and then the laughter erupted. "What was that?" a girl shrieked. "She's making up nonsense sounds. Driver's daughter is pretending to be Japanese now." Anaya's cheeks burned, but she held her ground. "It wasn't nonsense. I said, 'My name is Anaya. Pleased to meet you.'" "Oh, listen to the scholar," one boy mocked, putting on a fake accent. Another shouted, "Hey, Anaya, can you order sushi for us too?" The teacher tried to shush them, but the damage was done. The cruel laughter echoed in Anaya's ears, threatening to crush her spirit. What none of the students realized was that someone was standing just outside the classroom door. Mr. Arjun Malhotra. The CEO had come to pick up some documents from the principal and had been directed to wait near the language department. Drawn by the noise, he paused by the door, and what he saw stopped him in his tracks. Through the small glass panel, he watched as a group of privileged children mocked the lone girl standing bravely in the corner. He recognized her immediately. Ramesh's daughter. The laughter inside felt like knives, even to him, an outsider. But what struck him most was Anaya herself, her trembling hands clutching her notebook, her shoulders steady despite the humiliation, her eyes refusing to lower in shame. For the first time in years, the cold-hearted CEO felt a twinge in his chest. Something about her dignity in that moment shook him. Mrs. D'Souza finally regained control of the class. Enough. Since none of you believe her, let's test it. She scribbled a phrase in Japanese kanji. Watashi tachi wa mirai o tsukuru. Anyone? Can you tell me what this means? The class was silent. Not even the brightest, most well-traveled students could decipher the symbols. Some didn't even recognize the characters. Slowly, Anaya raised her hand. It means, we create the future. Gasps filled the room. The teacher's eyes widened. That's correct. The laughter died instantly. The same children who had mocked her were now speechless. The CEO's reaction. Behind the door, Mr. Malhotra felt his jaw tighten. He had built an empire on talent, intelligence, and determination. Yet here, in front of his eyes, was the daughter of his own driver, outshining the pampered children of the city's elite. A strange thought crossed his mind. What if this girl belongs in my world, not theirs? For a man who prided himself on never being surprised, this moment felt like a storm he hadn't predicted. When the bell rang, students rushed out, murmuring about what had just happened. Some threw her cold looks, others muttered under their breath, but none dared laugh again. Anaya quietly packed her books, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure if she had done the right thing. All she wanted to do was learn, not to stand out. As she stepped into the hallway, she found herself face to face with Mr. Malhotra. Her breath caught in her throat. She bowed her head politely, clutching her bag tighter. The CEO studied her for a long moment, his sharp eyes softening ever so slightly. Finally, he said, "Well done." That was all. 2 simple words, but to Anaya, they felt heavier than gold. That evening, when Ramesh came to pick her up, Anaya rushed into the car, her face glowing. "Papa, I answered in Japanese today. Everyone laughed, but then I got it right. Even the teacher was shocked." Ramesh's tired eyes lit up. He placed his hand gently on her head. "I told you, beta. Knowledge is your strength. I am proud of you." From the rear seat, Mr. Malhotra, who had joined them for the drive, spoke quietly. "Your daughter has talent, Ramesh. Don't ever let anyone tell her otherwise." Ramesh's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. Hearing such words from his powerful employer was something he could never have imagined. That night, Mr. Malhotra sat in his vast study, surrounded by shelves of books and awards, but his thoughts kept returning to the image of a young girl standing tall while the world laughed at her. He thought about his boardroom, filled with men twice her age who still lacked courage. He thought about his own son, Kabir, who had every opportunity but little drive. And then he thought about Anaya, the daughter of his driver, who had just shaken an entire classroom with a single sentence. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring into the amber liquid. Perhaps destiny hides brilliance in the most unlikely places, he mused. Unbeknownst to him, the events of that single day had already set into motion a story that would forever change not just Anaya's life, but his empire.
The morning after the language class incident, Anaya awoke before dawn.
The narrow room she shared with her father smelled faintly of oil and iron uniforms. She tiptoed to the small desk where her school books were stacked. While most children still slept, she opened a worn Japanese grammar book, its pages nearly falling apart, and began to practice quietly. Her father stirred on the thin mattress across the room. "Beta, it's still early." Anaya smiled. "I just want to be ready, Papa. Yesterday, everyone laughed at me. I don't want that to happen again." Ramesh sighed, pride and worry mixing in his chest. He didn't know how far her determination could take her, but he prayed silently that her path would lead somewhere brighter than his own. Mr. Arjun Malhotra sat at a long mahogany breakfast table, untouched coffee steaming in front of him. His mind was elsewhere, on the girl from yesterday. He couldn't stop replaying that scene in his head, the laughter, her trembling voice, and then the perfect translation that silenced the room. Was it a fluke, he wondered, or is there real brilliance inside her? His empire had been built on instincts, spotting talent where others saw nothing, but never before had he considered a child. Finally, he decided, if she truly has potential, I'll know soon enough. I'll test her myself. That afternoon, as Ramesh pulled up the limousine outside St. Clair's, Anaya climbed in and gasped. For the first time, she wasn't alone with her father. Sitting across from her was Mr. Malhotra himself, dressed sharply in a gray tailored suit, his presence filling the car. Her heart pounded. She bowed slightly, whispering, "Good evening, sir." He studied her quietly. "Good evening, Anaya. I have a favor to ask. Will you help me with something?" Anaya blinked in surprise. Me? "Yes. You see, I have a meeting with Japanese investors next week. I need to ensure that my pronunciation and phrases are correct. I hear you have some knowledge of the language. Could you test me?" Anaya's eyes widened. The most powerful man she knew, the man her father worked for, was asking her for help. She nodded nervously. "I'll try my best." That evening, instead of dropping her home, the limousine drove them to Malhotra's mansion. Chandeliers glowed warmly as servants opened the doors. Anaya hesitated at the threshold, clutching her school bag like a shield. "Come," Malhotra said, leading her to his study. "Let's begin." On the polished desk lay sheets of paper with Japanese phrases scrawled in careful handwriting. Malhotra cleared his throat. "Watashi wa Malhotra desu." Anaya bit her lip, then shook her head. "Sir, you must soften the ra sound. It's closer to la. Try again." He raised an eyebrow. Few dared to correct him, but her honesty made him smirk. "Very well. Wa ta shi wa mang ho ta de su." She nodded approvingly. For the next hour, the unlikely pair sat across from each other, the billionaire CEO repeating words, the driver's daughter correcting him with patience and quiet confidence. But what Anaya didn't know was that Malhotra wasn't only testing his Japanese, he was testing her. Would she hesitate to speak the truth in front of power? Would she shy away under pressure? To his astonishment, she did neither. At one point, when he deliberately misread a character, she frowned. "No, sir, that's not correct. It means trust, not trade. You can't mix them up. It changes the whole sentence." Her tone was respectful but firm. For a man used to people bending over backwards to please him, her bluntness was refreshing. This girl, she doesn't just know words, she has backbone. Down the hallway, Ramesh paced nervously. He had never set foot this deep inside the mansion, and now his daughter was alone with the master of the house. He feared she might make a mistake that would cost him his job. A housemaid passed by and whispered, "Don't worry, Sir doesn't invite just anyone into his study. If she's there, it means he sees something in her." But that only made Ramesh more anxious. What if he expects too much from her? She's only a child. When the lesson ended, Malhotra leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. You're very sharp, Anaya. Where did you learn this language? She hesitated. Papa found some old books in the library near his quarters. I borrowed them. I liked the way Japanese sounds. It felt like solving a puzzle. Malhotra chuckled. A puzzle? Do you enjoy puzzles? Yes, sir. I earnestly do. They make me think in different ways. When I solve one, it feels like I can solve bigger problems too. Her words struck him like a revelation. So many of his executives, with their degrees and polished suits, lacked this kind of natural curiosity. Later that night, after Anaya and her father had left, Malhotra poured himself another drink in the silence of his study. He replayed her words again. When I solve one, it feels like I can solve bigger problems too. That kind of mindset is rare, priceless. He made up his mind. I won't just test her with language. I'll push her limits. I'll see if she can solve the puzzles of the real world. From that day forward, Anaya's evenings began to change. Sometimes Malhotra asked her to help decode a passage in Japanese. Other times he casually dropped riddles, math problems, or even moral dilemmas into our conversations, each one carefully designed to gauge her thinking. And every time, Anaya surprised him, not only with her intelligence, but with her integrity. She never gave the answer she thought he wanted, only the one she truly believed. And with each passing day, the unthinkable idea began to form in his mind. What if she is destined for more than this? What if she could inherit something greater than poverty? But while evenings in the mansion grew brighter, mornings at school remained dark. The bullying didn't stop. In fact, it worsened. Her classmates whispered that she was the driver's daughter pretending to be rich. Some even mocked her for spending time at the CEO's house, claiming she was trying to buy her way into the family. At night, she held back tears in front of her father. She didn't want him to worry. Instead, she buried herself in books, in lessons, in puzzles, clinging to the belief that knowledge would be her escape. One evening, after an extra-long session, Malhotra dismissed her with an unreadable expression. "You've done well, Anaya. But tomorrow, I'll have a real test for you, something far more important than language." Her eyes widened. "What kind of test, sir?" He didn't answer. He only smiled faintly, a glimmer of challenge in his eyes. As she stepped into her father's car, Anaya's heart raced with both fear and excitement. She didn't know it yet, but the test waiting for her would alter the course of her entire life.
The next afternoon, as the last bell rang at St. Clair's, Anaya clutched her bag tightly. She barely noticed the taunts of her classmates. Her mind was too busy replaying Mr. Malhotra's words. "Tomorrow, I'll have a real test for you, something far more important than language." Her heart thudded as the limousine pulled up. The driver opened the door, and she stepped inside. Her father gave her a nervous smile from the front seat, but even he couldn't hide his curiosity. That evening, the mansion felt different. The lights seemed brighter, the hallways quieter, as though the very air anticipated something important. Malhotra was waiting in the study, dressed not in a business suit, but in a simple dark kurta. His usual air of commanding authority felt tempered, but his eyes were sharper than ever. "Good evening, Anaya. Tonight is not just another lesson. Tonight I want to see how you think. About people, about choices, about life itself." Anaya swallowed nervously. "Yes, sir." On the desk lay 3 small wooden boxes. Malhotra gestured to them. Inside one of these boxes is a set of gold coins. The other 2 are empty. Each box has a label: always truth, always lies, and sometimes lies, sometimes truth.
Only one label is accurate. You may ask me 3 questions, and I will answer as though I am the box itself. Your task is to figure out which one truly contains the gold. Anaya's brows furrowed. A logic puzzle. She thought carefully, biting her lip. Then one by one she asked her questions. Each time Malhotra answered in riddles, shifting between truth and falsehood. Finally, after a long silence, she pointed to the middle box. "This one, sir. The others contradict themselves. This is the only one consistent with all possibilities." Malhotra opened it with a smile. Inside, golden coins gleamed. "Well done," he said softly. "Most of my senior managers failed this puzzle. You solved it in minutes." Anaya's cheeks flushed, but she quickly lowered her gaze. Malhotra's expression grew more serious. He placed 2 folders on the desk. "In this folder," he said, tapping the first, "is a business project that will bring enormous profit, but it will exploit hundreds of poor farmers. In this second folder is a project that will bring less profit, but will improve lives for thousands of workers. If you were in charge, which project would you choose?" Anaya hesitated. This wasn't numbers or logic anymore. It was morality. "Sir," she said carefully, "I would choose the second, because profit may fill pockets, but fairness fills hearts. People will work harder if they are respected. In the long run, that might even bring more success." Malhotra leaned back, astonished. She was only a child, yet her reasoning struck him as wiser than most adults. But Malhotra wasn't done. He narrowed his eyes. "What if your father's job depended on the first project, the one that exploits farmers? Would you still choose the second?" Anaya froze. The question cut deeply. She pictured her father, tired from long hours of driving, doing everything for her future. Her lips trembled, but she lifted her chin. "Sir, even then, I would choose the second. Because if I hurt others to save us, then how different would we be from bullies at school? Papa taught me to stand tall, not to step on others." A silence fell over the room. Then, for the first time, Malhotra's stern face softened into something rare: admiration. Behind the slightly open study door, Ramesh stood frozen. He had been delivering a tray of tea when he overheard his daughter's voice. Her courage brought tears to his eyes. She would sacrifice her own comfort for strangers. How did I get so lucky to be her father? Malhotra finally closed both folders and locked them away. "Very well, Anaya. You've shown me logic, morality, and honesty. Now I want to see your courage." He handed her a sealed envelope. "Inside this is a letter written in Japanese. Tomorrow morning, I want you to read it aloud in front of my board of directors. They won't expect it. Many will mock you. Some may even say you don't belong there. But if you can stand firm in that room, then I will know you are truly ready." Anaya's heart pounded. Speaking Japanese in front of a room full of powerful strangers. She had never been so terrified. But she clenched her fists and nodded. "I'll do it." That night, back in their small room, she practiced the letter again and again under the dim bulb. Her father watched silently, pride swelling with every word she pronounced correctly. When she finally collapsed from exhaustion, he covered her with a blanket and whispered, "One day, beta, the world will see you the way I do." The next morning, the atmosphere at Malhotra's company headquarters was tense. The massive boardroom gleamed with polished wood and glass, filled with men and women in suits,
each holding expensive pens and impatient expressions. When Ramesh entered with Anaya, the directors exchanged puzzled looks. "What is this, Arjun?" one of them whispered to the CEO. "Why is a child here?" Malhotra only raised a hand for silence. "You'll see." Anaya stepped to the head of the table, her knees trembling. She unfolded the letter, her small hands shaking slightly. Laughter rippled through the room. "A driver's daughter reading Japanese. This is absurd," one man muttered. But then she began. Her voice wavered at first, but soon steadied as the familiar rhythm of the language carried her forward. She read the letter flawlessly, every character precise, every phrase elegant. The laughter died. One by one, the directors leaned forward, astonished. When she finished, the room was silent. Finally, Malhotra rose. "Gentlemen and ladies, what you just witnessed is not a trick. It is the mind of a girl you would dismiss without thought. Remember this moment the next time you judge someone by their status." He turned to Anaya. "Well done. You have passed the test." As applause reluctantly filled the boardroom, a shadow passed over Malhotra's face. For even as he celebrated Anaya's courage, he knew this was only the beginning. For every victory she earned, greater challenges would rise. Challenges that could either make her the heir to his empire, or break her spirit forever. And unseen by both of them, one director slipped out of the room, already dialing a number on his phone. Someone outside these walls would pay handsomely for this information.
The applause in the boardroom was still echoing when Anaya stepped down from the podium. She clutched the folded letter, her hands still trembling, but her eyes shone with relief. She had done it, spoken in front of the most powerful people she had ever seen. Her father, waiting quietly by the door, gave her a proud nod. To anyone else, it was a small gesture, but to her, it felt like the world. But as she basked in the moment, she didn't see the dark glances exchanged across the polished table. Later that day, when Malhotra excused himself for a call, several directors lingered behind. One, a heavy-set man named Mr. Kapoor, leaned toward the others. "This is madness," he hissed. "He brings in a driver's daughter and parades her like some prodigy. If he keeps this up, she'll be sitting at this very table one day." A woman in a sharp blue suit smirked. "And what happens to us then, Kapoor? Years of loyalty and experience thrown aside for a child with a good accent?" Another director adjusted his glasses. "We need to remind the boss that sentiment has no place in business. If this girl keeps winning his attention, she'll threaten everything we've built." Their whispers grew sharper, colder. By the time they left the boardroom, an invisible line had been drawn. Anaya was no longer just a child in their eyes. She was a threat. Meanwhile, Malhotra's interest in Anaya only deepened. Over the next week, he invited her daily, sometimes to the mansion, sometimes to the office. He taught her about numbers, profit margins, balance sheets, investments. At first, the terms overwhelmed her, but her sharp mind adapted quickly. "Why do expenses matter more than revenue, sir?" she asked innocently. Malhotra chuckled. "Because if you can't control what leaves your pocket, no matter how much enters, you'll end up broke." Her quick grasp of these concepts left even Malhotra's top advisors impressed and uneasy. One evening, as Ramesh was leaving the mansion with Anaya, Mr. Kapoor intercepted him. "Ramesh, a word," he asked smoothly. The driver hesitated. Kapoor was powerful, too powerful to refuse. "You must be proud," continued Kapoor, his tone dripping with false sweetness. "Your daughter dazzling the CEO himself. But, tell me,
Do you really believe a man like Mr. Malhotra would ever hand his empire to the daughter of a driver? Do you think the board, the shareholders, the investors would allow it? Ramesh stiffened. Sir, I don't pretend to know such things. All I know is my daughter is learning. That is enough. Kapoor's smile widened, predatory. For now, maybe. But when she stumbles, and she will stumble, don't expect Malhotra to protect her. He'll move on, and you'll be left with nothing but broken dreams. He walked away, leaving Ramesh shaken. That night, as he watched Anaya study under their dim light, his heart ached. Was he doing the right thing, letting her get pulled into a world so far above their station? A week later, during a company gala, Malhotra summoned Anaya. The glittering ballroom was filled with chandeliers, silk gowns, and the low hum of laughter. Tonight, Malhotra said quietly, I want you to mingle. Speak to my guests. See if you can read their intentions. Business is not only contracts, it's about people. Anaya's eyes widened. But sir, I don't know anyone here. That is precisely the point. She hesitated, then nodded. Unbeknownst to her, Kapoor had heard of this test. He seized the opportunity. As Anaya wandered nervously through the ballroom, he guided a group of influential guests toward her. They began asking her questions, seemingly polite, but laced with malice. So, little one, do you plan to run this company when you grow up? Do you know what EBITDA means? Another man asked mockingly, certain she wouldn't know. The circle of adults tightened, their smiles cruel, their questions sharper. Anaya's throat dried. She wanted to flee, but Malhotra's words rang in her ears. See if you can read their intentions. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. When she opened them, her gaze was firm. You're asking if I know every word in your business books. But business isn't just words. It's about choices. For example, if you spill this water, the glass looks empty. But if you refill it, it shines again. A company is the same. It's not about how much you lose or gain in one moment. It's about whether you can refill what's missing. Isn't that more important than big words? The group went silent, taken aback. From across the room, Malhotra smiled faintly. She had seen through their cruelty and responded with disarming simplicity. Later that night, Kapoor met secretly with the same directors. His face was pale with frustration. She turned their mockery into admiration. This is dangerous. If Malhotra keeps grooming her, the board will lose its power entirely. The woman in blue frowned. Then we must act faster. We can't just rely on questions at parties. We need to orchestrate a failure, something public, something Malhotra cannot ignore. The room darkened with agreement. Meanwhile, Ramesh's unease grew. He remembered Kapoor's warning. Each time he watched Anaya sit across from billionaires, her tiny figure swallowed by their expensive suits, he wondered if she was walking into a storm she could never survive. But when he tried to speak to her, she only smiled. Papa, don't worry. Mr. Malhotra believes in me. That means I must believe in myself, too. Her determination silenced him, but his worry deepened. The next morning, a confidential envelope landed on Malhotra's desk. Inside was a forged report suggesting that Anaya had cheated on one of her tests. As Malhotra stared at the papers, his jaw tightened. He didn't want to believe it, but the evidence looked convincing. And across town, Kapoor allowed himself a rare smile. This time, he murmured, the little prodigy won't escape so easily.
Hannah had never felt the weight of eyes on her the way she did now.
Every step she took through the polished marble corridors of Harrington Global seemed to echo louder than the last. The whispers followed her. Executives, assistants, even interns. She's too young. She's not even his real daughter. She'll ruin us all. Hannah kept her head high, but inside her chest, doubts gnawed at her. She had proven herself in Japan. She had stood tall in board meetings, but the old guard of Harrington Global was not ready to accept her yet, and Richard Grant made sure of it. In his sleek office overlooking the skyline, Grant sipped whiskey as he studied Hannah's every move. He had been with the company for 25 years, climbing from junior analyst to chief strategist. He had built alliances, earned respect, and cemented power. And now this girl, this daughter of a driver, was threatening to undo it all. Unacceptable, he muttered, swirling the glass. He called his assistant. Keep tabs on her presentations and leak anything questionable. Grant wasn't reckless. He didn't strike openly. He planted seeds of doubt. A whisper here, a misleading statistic there. Soon, cracks would appear. It began small. An article appeared in a minor business journal. Nepotism at Harrington Global? The piece speculated whether Hannah Harrington had been handed her position. A week later, during a press event, a reporter asked bluntly, "Miss Harrington, what makes you qualified to lead a billion-dollar project at your age?" Hannah felt the sting, but she smiled. Results will answer your question. Still, the damage spread. On social media, hashtags trended #nepotism princess and #driver's kid running a millionaire company. Hannah pretended not to notice, but Amelia saw the way Hannah's hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. One evening, Amelia stormed into Hannah's office, laptop in hand. She showed Hannah an internal memo. "These numbers were altered, deliberately. It makes your Tokyo expansion look like a disaster waiting to happen." Hannah's eyes widened. "Who?" Amelia hesitated. "Richard Grant. He's pulling strings, quietly. He wants the board to think you're incompetent." The revelation hit Hannah like a punch. She leaned back in her chair, her breath shaky. Why would he go this far? Because he thinks he's the rightful heir. And honestly, many of the old executives agree. That night, Hannah sat with her father, Mr. Harrington, in his study. The fireplate flickered across his weathered face. "Dad, do you ever regret choosing me?" she asked suddenly. He set down his book, startled. "Hannah, what on earth?" "The board doesn't trust me. The managers don't. Grant is sabotaging me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." Her father rose, walked over, and placed his hands firmly on her shoulders. "Listen to me. You are not here because of pity. You are here because you earned it, because you are the only one brave enough to speak truth, to see what others ignore. They fear you because you are change." Tears burned Hannah's eyes. "But what if I fail?" "Then you fail, but you fail forward and you rise again. That's leadership." 2 weeks later, the quarterly board meeting arrived. The air was thick with tension. Hannah sat at the long mahogany table, her notes neatly stacked, Amelia beside her. Across from her, Richard Grant leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Midway through the meeting, Grant interrupted. "Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I have concerns about the Tokyo project. The numbers, well, they don't add up. In fact, the forecasts show potential losses of $200 million. Gasps rippled through the room. Board members leaned forward, murmuring. Hannah's pulse pounded. She knew those numbers were false. Grant had planted them. She stood slowly. "Those numbers are wrong." Grant raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting I fabricated them?" Hannah didn't blink. "Yes." The room fell silent.
She handed out copies of her own analysis, painstakingly verified with Amelia's help. Each page was watermarked, time-stamped, backed with third-party research. Here are the real numbers, she said firmly. Tokyo is not a liability. It's an opportunity, with projected growth of 15% annually. Someone tampered with this data to sabotage the project and me. All eyes turned to Grant. His jaw tightened, but he masked it with a scoff. This is ridiculous. Conspiracy theories from a child desperate to prove herself? But Hana didn't falter. If I am wrong, then let the auditors check both reports. Publicly. Let them decide. Grant froze. He hadn't expected her to challenge him openly, with such calm defiance. The meeting ended in chaos. An external audit was approved. For the first time, the board members weren't sure whom to believe. As Hama left the room, Amelia squeezed her shoulder. That was brave. But Hana didn't feel brave. She felt the storm gathering, because she knew this was only the beginning.
The air inside the towering glass skyscraper was heavy with tension. For the first time since the company had been built, the boardroom was filled with whispers of rebellion. Mr. Harrington sat at the head of the table, his silver hair catching the light from the crystal chandelier. His face was calm, but his eyes, sharp as blades, scanned each board member who sat opposite him. These were men and women who had stood with him for decades, helping transform his vision into a global empire. Yet today they looked at him with doubt, even defiance. The source of that defiance was not hidden. It sat quietly at the other end of the long mahogany table. Hana, the driver's daughter, now legally adopted as his own, sat with perfect posture. She wore a navy blazer over a crisp white blouse, her long black hair neatly tied back. Her hands rested gently on the table, calm and composed, though her heart raced beneath the surface. She could feel the weight of their stares. "She's just a child," one board member muttered under his breath. "She doesn't belong here," another whispered. "This company is not a charity project." Mr. Harrington raised his hand, silencing the murmurs instantly. His voice, though soft, commanded respect. "Ladies and gentlemen, I did not call this meeting to debate my decisions as a father. I called it to discuss the future of this empire. Hana will be a part of that future." The words hung in the air like thunder. Several of the executives shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Mr. Grant, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 50s with graying temples, leaned forward. He had been Harrington's right-hand man for years, but loyalty had its limits. "With all due respect, sir," Grant began, "this girl has no formal education in business. She is not even out of high school. We cannot risk the future of a multi-billion-dollar empire on sentimentality." A ripple of agreement spread across the room. Hana lowered her gaze for a moment, her hands tightening in her lap. But then she remembered her father's words from the night before. "They will test you, Hana. They will doubt you. But you must not falter. Show them not who you are, but what you are capable of." She lifted her chin. "May I speak?" Her voice was clear, confident. The room fell into silence. Even Mr. Harrington raised his eyebrow, not in surprise, but in approval. The chairman of the board, a stern woman named Mrs. Kensington, crossed her arms. "Very well, child. Let's hear you." Hana stood slowly, her presence commanding despite her youth. She walked toward the large digital display at the front of the room. With a steady hand, she tapped the screen, pulling up a graph. "This," she said, pointing to the red, downward curve, "is your problem." The room leaned forward. It was the company's 5-year projection, showing slowing growth in several markets. "I may not be a trained executive," Hana continued, her voice unwavering, "but I do know how to observe. I spent the last 3 weeks reading your quarterly reports, and something stood out to me immediately. You are investing too much in Western expansion and ignoring Asia, specifically Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia. These regions are growing at rates far beyond the US and Europe. Some board members frowned, exchanging glances. Grant scoffed. You think we haven't considered that? You have, Hannah replied calmly, but you dismissed it, because you didn't have anyone who understood the cultural and linguistic barriers, but I do. Her words sliced through the room. Several of the members straightened in their seats, intrigued despite themselves. She tapped again, switching the screen to a market analysis she had compiled late at night while her father worked in his study. Bar graphs, pie charts, and comparative studies filled the display. In Japan, Hannah explained, your competitors are ahead because they tailor their products to cultural needs. They understand respect, tradition, subtlety. You cannot enter Japan with Western-style arrogance, but with humility and precision you can, and I can help. Her Japanese accent was flawless as she switched languages mid-sentence, offering a brief but perfectly articulated example of how the company's slogan would sound if localized. The room went silent. Even Grant, who was poised to dismiss her, blinked in surprise. He didn't understand a word of Japanese, but the confidence in her tone carried weight. Mrs. Kensington leaned forward, tapping her pen on the table. And what makes you think you can succeed where our analysts have failed? Hannah smiled faintly. Because I am not blinded by arrogance. I grew up invisible. I know what it means to be underestimated. That is the same mistake this company is making with Asia, and I refuse to let it continue. Her words were quiet, but they struck like lightning. The silence stretched on until one of the younger board members, a woman in her 30s named Amelia, spoke up. She's right. I reviewed the same reports last quarter. Asia is where the future lies. Grant frowned. You're suggesting we let a schoolgirl direct billion-dollar strategies? No, Hannah said firmly, turning to face him. I am suggesting you let me learn while also contributing insight where I can. I am not asking to lead this company tomorrow. I am asking for the chance to prove myself. If I fail, I will walk away. Her eyes locked with his, unflinching. Mr. Harrington leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't intervene. He didn't need to. Hannah was doing exactly what he had hoped for. The room was divided now. Some board members were visibly impressed. Others remained doubtful. Grant slammed his palm on the table. This is madness. We cannot gamble on a child. If this continues, I will call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership, sir. Gasps erupted around the room, but Mr. Harrington didn't flinch. He rose slowly, his tall figure imposing. Then do it, he said coldly. Call for your vote. But know this. While you are busy protecting your egos, I am preparing the future. And the future is sitting right here. He gestured toward Hannah. The room was dead silent. Even Grant's bravado faltered. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. For the first time in the company's history, the boardroom was silent, not because of the CEO, but because of a teenage girl who dared to speak.
The following weeks were like a storm beneath calm skies. To the outside world, Harrington Global seemed steady, its headquarters gleaming in the city skyline, its brand trusted worldwide. But inside the executive corridors, whispers and schemes brewed like poisonous smoke. The source of tension was clear: Hannah. She had earned respect in the boardroom with her sharp analysis, but not everyone was ready to accept the driver's daughter as the heir of an empire. Some executives saw her as a symbol of innovation and fresh vision. Others, especially the old guard, saw her as a threat to their influence. At the center of this conflict was Richard Grant. Grant had been Mr. Harrington's right-hand man for nearly 2 decades. He had overseen mergers, closed deals worth billions, and commanded respect from the workforce. But in his eyes, the adoption of Hana was an insult, a humiliation that undermined everything he had built. Replaced by a child, he muttered in his private office one late evening, staring at the city through floor-to-ceiling glass windows. His reflection in the glass looked older, harsher. I won't let this happen. Meanwhile, Hana was proving herself in ways no one had anticipated. Though still young, she spent long nights studying reports, listening to her father's counsel, and learning from the executives willing to mentor her. Amelia, the younger board member who had defended her in Part 7, became her ally. Together, they began crafting a pilot project for expansion into Japan. Hana worked quietly, but with fierce determination. She visited cultural consultants, studied international business law, and even reached out to Japanese students online to better understand current trends. Her idea was simple but powerful. Create a sub-brand under Harrington Global designed exclusively for Asian markets, starting in Tokyo. When she presented her draft proposal in a small internal meeting, several mid-level managers were stunned. This isn't just a student's project, this is strategy. News of her rising influence spread quickly, too quickly. It reached Richard Grant. Grant moved quietly at first. He began spreading rumors among the board members that Hana's proposal was reckless, that it would drain resources, that she was being shielded from accountability because of favoritism. But whispers weren't enough. So, one evening, he paid a visit to a shadowy figure in a quiet corner of the city, a man named Victor Lang, a rival businessman known for his ruthless tactics. Lang had always envied Harrington Global's dominance in the industry, and Grant knew his resentment could be weaponized. Over a glass of whiskey, Grant laid out his plan. Harrington is blinded by emotion. He's grooming this girl to take over, and if we don't act now, we'll all be at her mercy. I need your help to ensure she fails before she even begins. Lang smirked, leaning back in his leather chair. And what's in it for me? Grant's lips curled into a thin smile. Access. If Hana stumbles, the board will turn against Harrington, and when they do, I'll take the reins. You'll find Harrington Global suddenly open to partnerships, lucrative ones. The two men shook hands in the dim light. The betrayal had begun. Hana, unaware of the scheme's unfolding, continued working tirelessly. But one night, as she left the office late, she noticed Amelia waiting by the elevators. "You need to be careful," Amelia said, her voice low. "Some of the board members aren't just doubting you anymore. They're plotting." Hana frowned. "Plotting what?" Amelia hesitated. "To remove you. To turn the board against your father. I've heard whispers of deals being made in secret. Richard Grant is behind it." Hana's chest tightened, but she steadied her breath. "Then I need to work harder. If I can prove myself with the Japan project, they won't have any ground to stand on." Amelia touched her arm gently. "Promise me one thing, Hana. Don't try to fight them alone. They're not playing fair." Hana nodded, but in her heart, she already knew this was a battle she would have to face head-on. 2 weeks later, during the monthly board meeting, Richard Grant struck. The agenda seemed routine at first. Quarterly reports, financial updates, expansion discussions. Hana sat quietly beside her father, her proposal documents neatly arranged before her. But halfway through, Grant stood, holding a stack of papers. His voice boomed through the chamber. "Before we proceed with this experimental project of Miss Hana Harrington, I believe the board deserves to see certain facts." He handed out documents to each member. Hana's stomach dropped when she glanced at the papers.
They were manipulated projections, charts and graphs distorted to make her Japan expansion plan look catastrophic. Grant paced as he spoke. This proposal is reckless. It drains resources from our profitable Western operations. Look here, if this is implemented, we risk losing millions within the first year. Murmurs spread around the room. Some board members looked alarmed. Mr. Harrington's jaw tightened. Richard, this data is misleading. Grant smirked. Is it? Or are we simply ignoring hard truths because we've all fallen under the spell of sentimentality? This is not a classroom project. This is a company worth billions. Finally, he turned directly to Hana. His voice was sharp, almost venomous. Tell me, child, what do you know about managing international risk? About currency fluctuations, political instability, trade tariffs? Do you even understand the scale of what you're proposing? Or are you simply parroting ideas from textbooks? The boardroom erupted with whispers. Hana froze for a moment, her throat dry. The trap was perfect. He had attacked not only her plan, but her credibility. Mr. Harrington slammed his hand on the table. That's enough, Richard. But Hana raised her hand gently. Her father looked at her, surprised, but she gave him a small nod. I'll answer, she said softly. The room quieted. All eyes turned to her. She rose to her feet, her slim frame steady, her eyes locking on Grant's. You ask what I know? I know this company is failing to adapt. I know we are ignoring one of the fastest-growing regions in the world, and I know that your numbers, she held up the manipulated graphs, are fabricated. Gasps filled the room. Grant's face darkened. Excuse me? Hana tapped on the digital screen, pulling up the original reports she had stored on her tablet. In seconds, the true data appeared, data that supported her projections, not his. You twisted the figures to suit your agenda. This is not just dishonesty. This is sabotage. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. Grant's mask slipped for a moment, his rage flashing in his eyes. But he quickly recovered. You think you're clever, don't you? Do you really believe this board will take the word of a child over a man who has served this company for decades? He looked around the room, searching for support. But to his shock, several members avoided his gaze. Amelia spoke up first. If these documents are falsified, we need a full investigation. Others murmured in agreement. Grant clenched his fists. The tide was slipping away from him, but he wasn't finished. Not yet. That night, as Hana and her father left the office, she finally let her composure crack. Dad, she whispered, they'll never accept me. Not all of them. Grant will keep coming after me. Mr. Harrington placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Let him. Every strike he makes only exposes him further, and the board is beginning to see it. But what neither of them knew was that Richard Grant had already taken his betrayal one step further. He had given confidential company data to Victor Lang, the rival businessman, and Lang was preparing to use it to launch a direct attack on Harrington Global.
The boardroom battle had exposed Richard Grant's schemes, but his betrayal was far from over. While Harrington Global reeled from the shock of falsified reports, Victor Lang, the ruthless rival businessman, moved quickly. Using the data Grant had secretly fed him, Lang launched a massive campaign to undercut Harrington Global's projects. He leaked confidential strategies to the media, sowing doubt among shareholders. Competitors slashed prices overnight, threatening to destabilize the empire. For the first time in years, Mr. Harrington felt the empire he had built teetering at the edge of collapse. And at the heart of it all was his daughter, Hana. Shareholders demanded answers. Angry letters poured in. Stock prices dipped. The Japan project, Hana's pride, was put on hold until further review. In private, Hannah sat alone in her office, staring at the city lights beyond the glass. Her reflection looked tired, almost broken. She whispered to herself, "Maybe Grant was right. Maybe I don't belong here." But then she remembered Amelia's words, "Don't try to fight them alone." She clenched her fists. No, she wouldn't give up. Not after everything. One evening, Amelia burst into Hannah's office, excitement blazing in her eyes. "I found something." She dropped a flash drive onto the desk. Proof. Emails, contracts, everything linking Richard Grant to Victor Lang. He gave away company secrets. Hannah's eyes widened. How did you... Let's just say some of us don't like traitors, Amelia said, her lips curving into a thin smile. The two women worked late into the night, compiling the evidence into a single, airtight report. Hannah knew this was more than just about clearing her name. This was about saving her father's empire. The next morning, the boardroom was packed. Not just board members, but shareholders, legal advisors, and even a few journalists. The tension was electric. Richard Grant sat confidently at the table, his expression smug. He believed the damage had already been done. Then Hannah walked in, holding a thick binder. She placed it on a table with a sharp thud. "I have evidence," she said, her voice clear, "that Richard Grant has been leaking company data to our competitor, Victor Rang." The room exploded in murmurs. Grant scoffed. Baseless accusations, desperation from a child trying to cover her failures. Hannah didn't flinch. She handed copies of the report to each board member. "These are emails, contracts, and financial transfers, all linking you directly to Lang." Grant's face paled slightly, but he forced a laugh. "Forged! This is fabricated!" Amelia stepped forward. "I've verified them personally. Digital signatures match, dates, IP addresses, everything lines up." Finally, Mr. Harrington rose. His voice was low but thunderous. "Richard Grant, you betrayed not only me, but this company, its employees, and every shareholder who placed their trust in us. You are finished." Security guards entered. Grant's face twisted with rage as they escorted him out. His final words echoed through the room. "You'll regret this. Without me, this company will collapse." But the door slammed behind him, cutting off his last defense. With Grant gone, the atmosphere shifted. Shareholders leaned forward, curious. Board members whispered. Hannah took a deep breath. "I know many of you still doubt me. I know my age, my background, my adoption. It all make you question if I belong here. But let me show you something." She clicked on the projector, revealing the detailed Japan expansion plan. Charts, research, cultural insights, all polished and professional. This isn't just an idea. It's a strategy for the future. Japan isn't a risk. It's an opportunity. And if we don't take it, someone else will. For the next 20 minutes, she spoke with conviction, explaining every detail. Her voice was steady, her reasoning sound. By the end, the room was silent, not with doubt, but with awe. Finally, one of the oldest board members, a stern man who had once opposed her, leaned forward and said, "I underestimated you. Perhaps we all did." A ripple of agreement spread around the table. Mr. Harrington's eyes shone with pride. Weeks later, Harrington Global officially launched its new sub-brand in Tokyo. The campaign exploded in popularity, blending Western quality with Japanese cultural nuance. Sales soared, stock prices rebounded. And at the press conference, it was Hannah, not his father, who stood at the podium. The cameras flashed as she spoke. "This is only the beginning. Harrington Global is not just a company, it's a family, and our future is built on trust, innovation, and courage."
Her words were broadcast worldwide. For the first time, the world saw Hana not as the driver's daughter, but as the rightful heir of an empire. Months later, Hana walked through the quiet halls of the headquarters. She paused by her father's office where he sat reading reports with a rare, contented smile. "You've done more than I ever dreamed," he said softly. "I built this empire, Hana, but you have given it a future." She smiled, her heart swelling. "It's ours, Dad. Always ours." Outside, the city lights gleamed. The storm had passed. A new dawn had begun. And at its center stood Hana, the millionaire's daughter who had once been mocked, doubted, and underestimated, but who rose to become the leader of an empire.